the first time I read this, I wrote down Dolores Umbridge. It made me think of when she comes in Harry Potter and the prisoner, no, Order of the Phoenix. Oh my gosh, wrong book. Like, um, and she creates the educational decrees, and she comes in and tries to overhaul Hogwarts. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that Elder Gilbert is Umbridge
Yeah.
because she's like the most evil person in the Harry Potter universe.
As the cold winds of winter sweep in, there's nothing like the warmth of a comforting cup to help you slow down and unwind. This is the season. Let Postum be your cozy companion. Made from roasted grains, Postum is caffeine-free and rich with a smooth roasted flavor. It's the perfect drink for those quiet, chilly mornings. Whether you're curled up with a good book, sharing a laugh with loved ones, or simply watching the snow fall outside, a cup of Postum is the moment you have been waiting for.
Welcome, Twim Nation. This is the Twim Taffy edition, which stands for Tiffany and Friends for You. I am your host tonight, Tiffany Hales, and I am joined by none other than Laura Wolford. Laura, say hi to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. It is so good to be back.
Yes, we've had Laura on a couple of times. I recorded once with her, and then just as a guest on the Taffy edition. And then when the news broke about the church purchasing Kirtland and the Kirtland Temple and all of that, because Laura is an Ohio native, we immediately had to get her back on to have her share her thoughts, and that was fantastic.
I was happy to represent the great state of Ohio in that episode because clearly I can speak for all Ohio members of the church, but it was an exciting time. So
It was an exciting time. In fact, Ariane and I talked about you last time we recorded because we covered a
yes,
story about the what they do up there in Kirtland, where they have all of the nativities on display. Have you ever had an opportunity at Christmas time to travel up there and see that?
I've never made it up because December is a horrible month for a music teacher. I have no
Very
life.
true.
But I would love to get up there just because I do have a soft spot for nativities. I love seeing them. My mom collects them. So that is now on my bucket list of things to do. I am ashamed to admit that I didn't make it up to Kirtland this summer to see the new setup,
Oh,
and it escaped me. So that's on my list to try to do next summer, either with my nephews and niece or by myself or with some friends. I don't know, but um, I'll make it happen. It's on the goal.
okay. Speaking of trips, you just returned from a fantastic trip. If I correct me if I'm wrong, in the last like 30 days, 6 weeks, you've been to Disney World twice, once with your family and once by yourself. Am I,
Well,
did I understand that correctly?
I've been to Orlando
To
twice.
Orlando.
So
Okay.
my brother took his family to Universal Studios for
Okay. It was
Thanksgiving.
Universal. Okay.
And long story short, he was supposed to go earlier in the year. Plans changed. They moved it to Thanksgiving. And since it was over the holiday, he invited me to come with them. And the nephews and the niece were adamant that I should be there. So that was a lot of fun. And then I went to Disney for New Year's, which I tend to do. I really like celebrating New Year's at the park.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you need to tell our listeners about your trip because I followed it on Facebook because you and I are Facebook friends and I was loving all of the updates. So you took a challenge this year. So I want you to tell
Yes.
the listeners all about your challenge, what you did, and how you accomplished this feat.
So for the listeners' sake, I am obsessed with Disney World. I have been my whole life, and I didn't go until I was 27. I missed out going as a child, so I'm making up for lost time. That's at least what I tell myself to feel better about that. And I have always wanted to try to do the 4 park in a day challenge, where you hit up all 4 parks: Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and Epcot. And everyone sets different parameters. So when I decided to do this, I decided I would ride, one attraction. I would get one magic shot from a Disney photographer and in front of an iconic park location. And I would eat one food item, snack or
Oh,
meal. And the other thing that I planned on was that I would take every mode of Disney transportation at least once throughout the day. So bus, Skyliner, monorail, water transportation of some kind. I did everything. So I started at Animal Kingdom. I rope dropped, got there at 7:30 in the morning, um, with the intention of riding the safari before the park opened. Got back to the safari, which Animal Kingdom is a very large park, so all parks
Yes.
are large. You walk, 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 get back there. They're like, oh, it's not opening till 8:15. So then I'm like, well, I'll go get in line for Flight of Passage, the really big, crazy ride in
Yes.
Pandora. Walk all the way to that part of the park to have to then walk to the end of the line for Flight of Passage, which is in the Africa part, which is where the safari was. And then I realized it was a 2-hour wait already before the park had even opened. New Year's traffic.
Wow.
And I said,
Yes.
nope, not doing that. So I went back to the safari and I was like the fourth person in line, got to be in the first Jeep of the day, which was fun because I've never done the safari that early in the morning. So some of the animals were more active and some were not even present. So that was cool. The lions were out and moving and that was a lot of fun.
Ah,
And then, okay, so after Animal Kingdom, I took a bus to Hollywood Studios and rode the Runaway Railway.
okay.
And I did Muppet Vision 3D because that's closing, and I had to say goodbye because
Oh,
well, it's the last thing that Jim Henson worked on. So I'm like, that's just nostalgic. Anyway,
yes.
did that, took the Skyliner to Epcot, and then kind of cheated on this, rode the boat across the World Showcase Lagoon because I had been at Epcot for New Year's Eve and I had done my circling of the showcase multiple times, so I was not about to walk it again. It's big. So I rode across the lagoon. I rode Soarin' and uh, had a great time there. And then I took the monorail to Magic Kingdom, drug myself in. I can't even remember. I rode multiple rides at Magic Kingdom, so I can't. Oh, Small World is the one though that I
Mm,
did to check off as my
yes.
nostalgic ride because I obsessively love It's a Small World. I don't care how annoying the song gets. I love that ride. Um, and at the end of the day, I had 21,000 steps, but it was such a crazy, awesome day. I talked to a lot of cast members. It's worth noting, I was on that trip by myself as well. It was a solo trip,
Yes.
so I didn't have anyone with me. So I make a lot of friends. Um,
And that makes it easy if you don't have a crew that you're trying to negotiate
yeah,
and wrangle, and you can literally go wherever you want because you're
it
your own
really
boss.
it is nice, and again, you make a lot of friends, and it's a good time. So it was. I'm glad I did it. I don't know that I'll repeat it ever by myself. My One of my best friends is already like, okay, we're gonna do that next time we go together, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Okay, so
sure,
tell me that day, I've got 2 food related questions.
okay.
That day, what was your favorite thing you ate that day? Because you said you ate something different in each park. So tell me what your favorite thing was that you ate that day. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is when you go to Disney, since you are a Disney aficionado, what is absolutely your I must eat this every time I go to Disney food?
Okay, both are actually at Epcot.
Okay.
So, the favorite thing I ate on my park hopping day was I decided to eat lunch at the Connections Cafe, which I never eat at because I always like to eat around the World Showcase and get the cool foods there.
Yeah.
But they had a coconut mango milkshake that was completely plant based. It had a pomegranate and molasses syrup on top, and it was to die for. It was so good.
Wow.
And I was eating a light lunch because I knew I had a big desserty dinner heavy thing
Yeah.
planned. And so I had like this tuna salad that was fancy, that was really good. But that milkshake, I was like, oh my gosh, so good. Um, and the thing that I have to have every trip, it is the most inconsequential, silly thing, but in Epcot over in the eating place in the land pavilion, they
Okay.
have a plant-based chocolate mousse that is
Oh,
to die for, and you would not know that it is vegan and dairy free. And I have an allergy to dairy, listeners. I think I mentioned that
yeah.
last time because I think it had to do with my favorite thing. So I'm always very aware of the vegan food because that means I'm going to be safe.
Yes.
And Disney's got a lot of good options there. So that chocolate mousse, I have to stop and eat that if I am over in Disney. So that's like odd, but
Awesome.
it's my number one. That and a Mickey pretzel, because I mean, Mickey pretzels, they're
Okay. Well, if I here's the deal. If I ever plan a trip to Disney World, I think I'm going to call you and invite you because it sounds like you could be my own personal tour guide because that is my problem. I it's the decisions seem so overwhelming. I want somebody who is super familiar with it who will just say, "Tiffany, this is what we're doing." And I'll be like, "Perfect. Just let me follow you." I
happy to
I,
do that.
I will
I've
not quibble with you at all.
I've done that for a couple friends. You know, we just go together and
Yeah.
I help them map out what they want to do and the best way to, finagle the parks. It's just a lot of fun. And every trip is different. That's why I love to go back. And I love you. You meet so many cool people. I love to play Spot the Mormon while I'm there because there's always you can find them.
Oh yeah.
So
They're so obvious.
they really are. And I really like New Year's there because it is. I mean, it's fun. It's lighthearted. It's pretty wholesome, and it's just a good time.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your Disneyland trip.
Welcome.
I went nowhere and did nothing over Christmas. Mainly due to the fact that usually for lawyers, the 2 weeks kind of leading up to Christmas and New Year's and then New Year's after New Year's is usually a really lull time in the legal field, but it was not for me this year. I had a little bit of a break. I wasn't functioning at a 10. I was only functioning at an 8 at a scale out of 10 that week. So
Oh.
I did not get to take as much time off as I wanted. But one of the things that my husband and I did this year that I think we're going to do every year from now on because we loved it, our kids are all adults. They are grown. And so what we did is we said, we are doing Christmas at our house on Christmas Eve. So if you are available and you want to come to the house for Christmas, we are doing that on Christmas Eve. Come on over. Ariane came over with her husband and her kids. And so we all ate dinner together. They came about 5. We ate dinner together. We sent them home at 7 because they've got their own Christmas Eve traditions to do. And then we opened gifts, spent some time together. And I think by easily 9:30 or 10, everybody was gone. We picked up the house. We went to bed with a clean house and Christmas being over, and we slept in on Christmas Day. We had nowhere to go and nothing to do on Christmas Day but hang out with each other, and it was fantastic.
Isn't that the best?
It really is. So we decided from now on, we're just telling the kids Christmas Eve. That's when we're celebrating. If you can be here, great. If you can't, we'll catch you later. So,
So what
and
do you guys do for dinner on Christmas Eve in your house?
well, we had never done Christmas Eve dinner before. Usually Keith and Ariane came over on Christmas Day, and we decided to push it to Christmas Eve this year because they wanted to see all of our kids, our out of town kids that were here, and they liked it better too because they always leave the day after Christmas to go down to Arizona for a week. So they're rushing around on Christmas Day to get their presents open, to get their portion of dinner made, and then to get over to our house and then get home and get packed. So for them doing it Christmas Eve gave them oodles of time on Christmas Day. We did on Christmas Eve what we typically do on Christmas Day. Keith made this beef this year. He got prime rib, and oh my gosh, it was the best prime rib I have ever eaten in my whole entire life. It was melt in your mouth beef. It was
Oh,
so incredibly good. Like I would rank it in my top probably 1 or 2 3 favorite things that I ate in 2024. That is how good his beef was. And then I did the side dishes. So we had rolls, funeral potatoes, a salad. Ariane brought some fun, fancy dessert, and mac and cheese. I do a homemade mac and cheese. So there was
sounds like
something
a perfect holiday.
something for everyone. I do have to tell you the funniest story really quick.
Okay.
So, funeral potatoes. My daughter Lauren is engaged. And so, 2 or 3 days before Christmas, her fiance's mother was over at my house. And so I said, why don't you and your boyfriend come over to our house for for Christmas Eve dinner and join us? Because they didn't have anything planned. And Lauren and her fiance were coming over. And so she said, yes. She said, what are you having? And so I told her what I was having. And I said, funeral potatoes. And she's not a member of the church. And she said, funeral potatoes, what are those? And I was, and I'd never met anybody who didn't know what a funeral potato was.
It's such
And
a Mormon thing.
it's such a Mormon thing. And so I said, Oh, let me give you some context for funeral potatoes because she was thinking this was very morbid. So I told her what funeral potatoes were. I gave her a context for funeral potatoes. She thought that was hilarious. She came for dinner. Neither she nor her boyfriend had ever had a funeral potato till they came to my house. And so I had funeral potato virgins at my house for Christmas Eve. It was fantastic.
It really is such a weird Mormon phenomenon. It's so creepy that we just call them funeral potatoes, but they are so delicious.
They really are. They really
So
are.
good.
So
I oh.
that was my fun Christmas. Now, before we move on to stories, we have to talk about New Year's and the infamous song because you posted this on Facebook, your love of Ring Out Wild Bells.
Yes.
So, Laura,
Oh.
please share with us.
Okay, so if this gets cut from the new hymnal, I'm going to have some serious, serious thoughts and might even like start calling Salt Lake in protest. Ring out wild bells. Number one, the text is so interesting to read. And this idea of just, the year changing and renewal. And so the
Yes.
lyrics are gorgeous. But the thing that I love about the song is the music. It is this beautiful minor melody. And when you get into the older British carols, the traditional carols, they're all very minor and angry sounding. Sorry, I'm a music teacher, y'all, so I get a little music nerdy with this. But so you've got this beautiful song, minor key, but the thing that I love most about it is the very last chord. When you're singing through it, the very end, it resolves in this major happy chord, which we call a Picardy third in music. And it's because at that period in music history, like we have a long stretch where minor songs had to have a happy resolution. So you just blah, 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 and suddenly, big smile. It is okay. The world has righted because we have ended on the main chord in a major key. Life is good. There's just so many musical things that are beautiful about this song, but doggone it, so many people hate this song or they grump about it. You really can only sing it one Sunday a year. You have
It's
to
very
sing it the
true.
Sunday before New Year's. You also, people very rarely sing it right. I'll be that person. They don't get the rhythms right. They don't notice some of the musical nuances, but at the same time, the spirit's there. Who cares? Um, but I adore this song. And I got a lot of conversation on my post, and people then
Yes.
even off Facebook were saying things to be like, yeah, we saw that, and giving me their opinions. So,
Well, I have to say, I mean, you are no stranger to this podcast, and I have expressed my opinion on this song about how I think it is just like so depressing. And I'm like, oh, why do we have to sing this every year? And there's kind of like an Easter version of it that we sang one year that I was really mad about because I was like, Easter's happy. Why are we singing this depressing song on Easter? So let me tell you what happened in my ward this year with Ring Out Wild Bells.
okay.
So I think probably every year at New Year's, I complain about this song. It's nothing personal, Laura. So
It's
the
okay.
the new person who is in charge of music in our ward now is the former Relief Society president that I served with, and her husband David Larson, who I've had on this podcast several times. Uh, has continually told Tracy, my feelings on the music. So Tracy, in deference to me, didn't put it on the program for New Year's. She put on there "Come Let Us Anew," which I love. Come Let Us, or not
That
"Come
is
Let
a
Us
good
Anew,"
solid
"Let
hymn.
Us Anew." Is that whatever the title of it
Come
is?
let
Get
us
us
anew. I think it's
anyway.
anew.
I think it too. Anyway, so we sang that, which that is probably one of my top 10. I love it, but I have to tell you, I truly missed the Wild Bells. And then I was kind of regretting my choice. And I was like, I know I have issues with this song, but I think I really do like singing it for New Year's. And I was regretting telling David, axe it for New Year's. So I may ask it to come back next year.
I mean, it's this great, like, let the old year die, let the new year
Yes,
ring in. I
I love the
actually
message.
I found a version of it for choir and did it a couple years ago with one of my middle school choirs, I think
Really?
at the Christmas concert. And it was, the kids really liked it. They were a little confused by the text at first, but they enjoyed the song. So I will stand by this song.
Okay.
It needs its moment once a year. And then it can, the other 51 Sundays, it can chill.
Okay.
But
Sounds great to me.
I'm
All
sorry you
right.
didn't have that moment.
Well, I didn't I was caught off guard by the emotion that I had in not singing it. I didn't think I would feel that badly. And then I was like, no, I think even though I've given this song a bad rap, that maybe I actually do like it once a year. So I'm gonna request that it get put back in rotation. Ideally next year it would be great to sing Come Let Us Anew and Ring Out Wild Bells because I think they have both have a fantastic message for the new
They
year.
pair open up with Come Let Us Anew, and you have
Exactly.
to close with Ring Out Wild Bells. It has to
Yes.
be the last one.
I would agree. So, okay. We ought to move on to some stories. Before we move on to some stories, I do need to thank our sponsor. Postum was our sponsor in 2024 and they have returned. They are our sponsor in 2025.
Woohoo!
Um if you were here in person with me, I'd make you drink some Postum,
I
but you're
know
not,
that
so you
is,
can't.
yeah, it's a little far away. That is the one downside, but
That
we
is one
should,
downside.
next time I'm on, we should plan in advance and we should, try to make this
Oh,
happen.
we will have to do that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
I'm
All
game.
right, let's start some stories. The first story that we have tonight, you would be under a rock in America if you were not aware of the California wildfires and the Santa Ana winds that reached up to 100 miles an hour in the last couple of days and have really devastated some beautiful areas of Southern California, just wiped out homes and neighborhoods and communities. And so I've had a couple of questions. I've been waiting for the church to post something on this, and they did. They posted yesterday, and they had Elder Mark A. Bragg is the one that they quoted. He has ties to Southern California. He was born in Santa Monica. He attended UCLA. He began his career as a vice president of LA's Great Western Bank, and he said, of course, the church is mobilizing its resources and encouraging volunteers to provide aid for those who are in assistance, and that the church is committed to helping during this emergency and throughout the aftermath. And just he was expressing his sadness over the devastation, and that our prayers are with those who have lost their homes and are displaced, asking for protection for the first responders. The article also indicated that Utah was sending a number of firefighting equipment and firefighters down there. I know Idaho was as well. Um, kind of what I was hoping to see that I haven't seen yet, and I've been regularly checking, is a lot of times we will get stories that will tell us, oh, the missionaries are all safe, or all of our members
Yeah, we
are
haven't.
accounted for. And I think if a if an LDS church building had burned, we probably would know about that. So I don't think we've lost any buildings, but I can't help but think there have to be some members that have been affected by this. And it's always interesting to see how wards and communities mobilize to not only help the members in their ward, but also those who are around them. So I'm hoping in the coming days we'll get a little more information, but I think we will probably see those yellow helping hands shirts come out
For
of the
sure.
closet. So,
Yeah, it is kind of, I mean, we usually do hear something, but maybe it's just still too much in the early stages and they don't want to release misinformation. I was
yeah,
just really glad to see this put out. It's not that we know that the church and a
yeah,
lot of organizations are going in and providing aid. So I was grateful to see this. But it's so sad. It's so
yeah,
terrible.
it really is.
So,
It really is. All right, let's move on to our next story, which again, I've kind of semi adopted a new category called Mormons in the Media because it seems like every time I post, I've got some new TV show. And guess what? The moment continues and there is yet a new one. So,
yes,
Laura,
but
I
it's
will let you
not a
talk about
reality
this.
show
It's
this
not
time.
reality. Very true.
It's not. So we have a new Netflix series debuting called American Primeval. And it is exploring a part of our nation's history in the mid 1800s, and it covers on the westward expansion and the Saints out west under Brigham Young, and specifically uses the Mountain Meadows Massacre as a plot point to tell this story. And it looks like, from what I can read, um, that they are advertising this as historical fiction and really stressing that it is fictional, which I
Yes.
appreciate. I have a love-hate relationship with historical fiction because, like, I enjoy it. I'm a history nerd. I love watching and learning. And I love seeing the creative licenses they take to tell dramatic stories. However, we have so many people that confuse historical fiction with reality. And as a teacher, I have to argue with students all the time who want to tell me, oh, well, I saw it in Hamilton, therefore it's true. Or my personal favorite, when I had a kid arguing with me that Zeus was a loving father because of the Disney movie for Hercules. And I was like, oh, honey, we're not going to go there. But anyway, so love-hate relationship.
Yes.
But this show sounds really interesting. They've taken creative licenses. They've kind of reworked Brigham Young's character and another character in the story. And they're using the massacre specifically as a jumping point to uh, further the plot line, from what I can understand from
Yes.
reading. But I think this sounds interesting. I think this could be a really good show to watch. Um, it also I don't know. It'll just depend on how it's seen. The person who wrote this article, so Tad Walsh, he interviews mainly a woman who co-authored a book about the Mountain Meadows Massacre and its aftermath, Barbara Jones Brown. And she had a lot of great insights, and she was excited to watch it and see how accurate it was or was not. Um, and she, at the end, they tie in about the church's official stance on the massacre, how ultimately, history has shown that Brigham Young was not behind it, maybe added to the hostility of the time.
Yes.
Um, but I think that the theme of cultural tension between groups as we're through growing pains, I think that's a theme that is interesting and still relevant in different ways today. So I think this will be a very interesting watch. I'm excited for it. I'm intrigued.
I
Um,
am too. It just dropped yesterday, so it's
yeah,
it's still relatively new. So we haven't had a ton of reviews on it, and perhaps I don't know if I'll get to it before Ariane and I record next, but maybe some of the other hosts will get an opportunity to watch it and return and report with their thoughts
yes.
on
This is
it.
one I'm going to add to my Netflix queue, and I'm going to give it a go because, again,
Okay.
I like historical fiction, but we'll have to see.
Okay. Verdict's out.
All right.
Okay, now we got a big one that generated a lot of traffic on the internet this week.
Yes. So, this is an article by our favorite, Peggy Fletcher Stack. Love her.
Salt Lake
Um,
Tribune.
yes. And it is exploring the culture with BYU professors right now at the university, um, through their education commission. So it is a very long article. I would encourage, if you haven't read it, please go read it. There's so much information. So there is a commissioner of education, Clark Gilbert. He is a general authority, I think a 70, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he's a 70.
Anyway, and this is a position that I believe has been around for a while. This is not new, but it is part of the vetting process with professors. Um, Obviously, you have to have credentials to teach at BYU, and you do have to have an ecclesiastical endorsement, either from your bishop or, if you're not LDS, from your ecclesiastical leader. And you do have to ascribe to, it's not the honor code as the students, but there's a code that a professor would have
Yes.
to ascribe to. However, in recent years, this article has talked about that it's become a little bit more strict, for lack of a better way of putting it, or
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word strict. It's changed to a loyalty oath,
Yes.
that expecting to attest to their support of the church's position on marriage, family, and gender. And a lot of professors are beginning to feel this goes beyond the church's own stances and policies and is kind of um,
Orwellian
creating.
was how one of them described
Yes,
it.
Orwellian. It's taking, there's feelings that it's taking the church's stance and pushing it farther. To be completely honest, as I was reading this, I thought of a couple years ago when the stories were dropping about the honor code,
Hmm.
how the honor code was kind of being pushed a little farther than it probably should have been, and it got a kind of a hard look. Um, I think that was on this podcast that I heard that talked about, because I remember reading about
Yes.
that and finding it fascinating, because I didn't go to BYU. I didn't go to a church school. I stayed out here in Ohio. I There is a lot in this article. Um, And I do have to say that before I talk about this, part of me sees both sides. I
Mhm.
went to private religious school for 13 years. So the concept of you go to a school with a religious affiliation for a certain atmosphere, like I
Yes.
get that and I understand that. And I can see, like, if you're going to teach at BYU, you need to be ascribing to and supporting the doctrines and things that the church teaches. That makes sense. That rings, that registers. But what is happening, there's multiple stories in here from former professors that are sharing stories where what they are being, like adjunct professors that are being non-renewed, or people that are just not being hired or not passing that level of hiring. um there's nothing strong that they can pinpoint. Like they're like, oh, I wear a rainbow pin to class and I'm showing support for LGBT students, or I have children that are queer and I have posted about that on social media. One professor shared how he was struggling with he filled out the loyalty oath. He has a temple recommend. He's active in his congregation. He was discussing with his bishop just some concerns over I'm trying to find it. This is such a long article. Um, just concerns over some church teachings that, that were affecting his family, and his wife was no longer attending over concerns with that. And just a conversation with his bishop. And a couple of days after that conversation, his ecclesiastical endorsement was revoked. And in my mind, if you can have a temple recommend, what is preventing you from an ecclesiastical endorsement? There seems like there's a disconnect. um and that's a little scary. It's interesting, and we're only getting part of the story here, but at the same time, this is I think this is big. This is something worth looking. um a lot of the issues that were brought up in this article centered around LGBTQ
Yeah.
issues. A lot of concern there. There was a music professor that talked about his experience and watching. And I thought that was interesting because I've had, not nearly in the same way, but I have a little sticker in my classroom window. It's a rainbow flag and it says "Be safe" because my school were the bees, and
Mhm.
I have it up there with in alliance with the club at our school, that it's just letting my students know that my room is at least a safe space, that they will not be bullied, they will be respected, and if a student feels uncomfortable, I'm a teacher they can come talk to get pointed in the direction for help.
Yeah.
That's what that means. And I've had students who are members who've questioned me about that. Why do you have that in your window? We know the church is teaching, but we also know that the church is encouraging us to love one another. So there's levels to this. So it's very interesting. I liked towards the end, there were a couple phrases of this article that I think just get to the heart of the issue: behavior based versus belief based standards, and kind
Mhm.
of this going too far. And the author draws a conclusion, or not conclusion, a comparison, looking at the new For the Strength of Youth standards and the way ministering is moving. And it is more about like our personal journey
Yeah.
and our relationship with the Savior. And he's not the author was seeing this disconnect that it's principle based living, personal responsibility, that's not present with what's going on right now with these professors. And my heart breaks for them
Exactly.
because it's just it is Orwellian.
Yeah.
It's scary, this thought that you can just be non-renewed, you can have the credentials, you can have your temple recommend, you can have everything in place, but then this educational commission can nix you because, and they don't have to tell you why, and they're not giving
Exactly.
solid reasons. So it's very um on a humorous note, the first time I read this, I wrote down Dolores Umbridge. It made me think of when she comes in Harry Potter and the prisoner, no, Order of the Phoenix. Oh my gosh, wrong book. Oy. Um, and she creates the educational decrees, and she comes in and tries to overhaul Hogwarts. And I am not saying
Yeah.
that Elder Gilbert is Umbridge,
Yeah.
because she's like the most evil person in the Harry Potter universe. And it talks about some quotes from him from previous interviews, that he's trying to make sure that a church school does not move too far into the secular realm, which I understand and respect, and that's his job.
Yeah.
But it's just, oh, where is the pendulum? Are we going to swing too far? That's what this is beginning to.
Exactly.
I've talked a
And
lot. I'm sorry.
no, and and that was my concern in reading through this is just like what you said. I understand this is a private institution. It's a church school. They're able to set their standards. I am not beefing with that in any way, shape, or form. I went to BYU. I signed the honor code. I chose to live by those standards. I chose to go to BYU knowing I would be required to live by those standards. And obviously, if you don't want to live by those standards or feel uncomfortable signing any of that, nobody's forcing you to go to BYU.
Yeah.
Nobody is forcing you to work at BYU. But at this, if the environment there makes you uncomfortable, but what is concerning to me is just like what you said. We swing the pendulum one way, and I think this is true for in multiple areas of life. The pendulum swings one way, it gets too far to the extreme that way, and then it swings extremely back the other way, when it would be nice if it could just stay in the middle and have a much more balanced approach. Because my concern is that obviously this feels on its face very judgy, and we're trying to maybe get away from being less judgy. And if you are going to a university, where there is where there's judgment of the professors, where there's judgment of you living the honor code, because certainly when I was at BYU, there is a range of what some people feel is acceptable under the honor code and some people don't. And so there was constant judgment of, well, in my opinion, you're violating the honor code, and somebody else saying, well, I don't interpret the honor code that way, so I don't feel that I'm violating the honor code. So we have a perpetuation of this just judgment of each other that then I think when students leave BYU tends to perpetuate in wards and things like that. And I'm wanting us to get away from that culture of judgment and more towards a culture of loving each other and realizing, you know what? I'm on my path, you're on your path. I'm not going to worry about what you're doing on your path. I need to focus on my path and what I'm doing and my relationship with the Savior,
Yeah.
not judging your path and your relationship with the
No,
Savior.
there's too much going on in my life to worry about judging anyone
Yeah,
else at this point, to be completely
exactly.
honest. And
Yeah,
I just it is I wrote down multiple times in my, what happened to Judge Not,
yeah,
what happened to free agency, what happened to these things. And some of again, this is a long article. There's a lot of things that are brought in. There's a part that talks about how previously, um, when prospective hires were being interviewed, so they have their interview with their department, and then I think they have an interview like with the board of trustees or something higher level administrative. Then they have a general authority interview, and then it goes to the commission, the educational commission. And when they would go to the general authority interview, whichever general authority, like there's a lot of general authorities, spouses were invited but not required. But now spouses are required to attend. And it also mentions that some leaders have threatened to withhold candidate or continuing faculty ecclesiastical endorsements if spouses are not attending church. Why does someone else's choice affect you? Like that
yeah,
completely goes against
yeah,
the doctrine of agency. Like
yeah,
it's choices. And
yeah,
there are just a lot of things reading through this, that, yeah, they're concerned. There was a part that talked about a professor of legal theory, Professor Geddix. I hope I said his name right.
yes. I,
Did
I
you?
had him in law school and
Was he
he was
wonderful?
fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he taught there for 34 years. So this is someone who is not a stranger to the school. He just retired, so clearly known. And then he was invited back to come and teach a seminar over the summer, and he agreed. And he just thought he'd have to, get a, a, a bishop clearance call, just kind
Yeah,
of sign off formality. But no, he was going to be required to have an account with a
a full
background
vetting
investigating term,
process.
and they were going to go through the internet to find every bit of information about him over the last 7 years and things like that and all this stuff. And he ultimately decided, he questioned it and was basically told, um, Like, if you didn't like it, don't apply. So he
Yeah.
decided to just not do it because there are parts of his career that he's very proud of that he knows that maybe the church wouldn't like. Like, he worked on the Obergefell Supreme
Yeah.
Court decision that legalized same-sex marriage, and he has gay relatives, so he hangs pride flags. So he's like, he didn't want to be dragged through the mud for things like that. And that goes back to agency and this this personal journey we each have. And that's why I love the direction that we've gone with
Yeah.
I always go back to the For the Strength of Youth standards because I work with teenagers, and I do not regret the standards that I grew up with, but I grew
Yeah.
up when the booklet, it spelled it out. This is what
Yeah.
you will do. This is what you will not do. And now I look at my students and they have, it's more about their personal journey and where they're
Hmm.
at and counseling with your parents and your leaders. And I love that it encourages that personal growth
Yes.
and that it takes the shame away.
Yeah.
So this article makes me sad for the professors who felt they have to leave. It makes me sad for the professors who felt they couldn't speak in
Yeah.
this interview. Um, I hope there's more to the story that we're not getting that could shed some light, but there's a lot of things that just make me sad in this article and are concerning.
I completely agree with you. So,
And I probably
amen.
should stop getting off. I should get off my soapbox now because I probably could talk a full hour about this article.
There is a lot to unpack in it, but I think we
Yeah.
did. Hopefully, our listeners will let us know. But I think we did a good job of really kind of addressing what some of the issues are, and what would be really interesting is I hope when the twin siblings record, Matt works for BYU Idaho, so he would be subject to these same standards. I would love to hear his take on this article. So
I
I hope
would love to hear that too. Matt and
I
Melissa,
hope
the challenge is extended.
the challenge is extended, Matt and Melissa. I hope that when you record, that Matt will share his thoughts on this article because I would like his perspective as actually someone who is a BYU employee and is subject to this. Has Peggy Fletcher Stack, is she making a mountain out of a molehill, or are there some concerns? I think definitely there are some concerns, but
Yeah.
anyway, so hopefully they'll cover it. All right, let's
Let's
move
do
on to a
something
new one.
different.
We're going to move on to from that very heavy topic to a very lightweight topic. And we are going to talk about the pageant world because, as you know, I am a pageant girl and I love the pageant world. We recently, just last weekend, had Miss America. And of course, I grew up watching Miss America. So the connection is the Miss Washington, D.C. won the most inspirational award at the Miss America pageant. And she is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints. And so the Deseret News did a wonderful article on her and interviewed her. And it's kind of funny because the article starts out with parents are more likely to have a son compete in the Super Bowl than have a daughter compete in the Miss America pageant, explained Katie Ann Powell, a Utah native who competed in the 2025 Miss America pageant. Anyway, so this particular award that she won, there's all sorts of things that go into it. Moments from on stage are taken into account, but creating organic, meaningful connections off stage is a leading criteria. So I kind of was unsure if this is an award that is voted on by the contestants or if this is an award that's given by the judges. To me, it kind of seems like this is an award that's voted on by the contestants because if one of the criteria is creating organic, meaningful connections off stage, I don't think off stage the judges have a lot of interaction with these contestants. So I am assuming this was voted on by her peers. And you look at the women who compete in this pageant, and they are amazing women doing amazing things. And so to kind of rise to the cream of the crop and be the most inspirational in a pack of 51 other super inspirational women is great for her. There was one other contestant that was a member of the church, which was, of course, was Miss Utah. So hats off to those ladies for competing, and congratulations to Miss Washington, D.C.,
No.
Sister Powell, on winning most inspirational.
It was really fascinating to read about how she even got in the pageant world and
Yeah,
just her experience there. Definitely knocks out the preconceived stereotypes that pageants are just about pretty looks and
yeah,
all those things. So definitely a good
exactly.
read.
All right, you want to give us a brief shout out on Temple Square updates?
Yes. So the Temple Square, it is rolling along. They have been doing a lot of work to fortify the Salt Lake Temple against potential future earthquakes and things like that. There's a lot of technical language in this. So if you're someone who's really fascinated by the building process, go read that. I am hopelessly stereotypically female, and a lot of this went over my head in that sense. But I am still impressed with the magnitude of the job they're doing. I really loved the second half of the article where they talked about some of the extra stuff they've
Yes.
added. There's a new statue, the "Come Follow Me" statue, which joins the first Vision statue. And I love that they're adding more statues that are focused on Christ. And they have more statues planned that are following the life and teachings of the Savior. I think that it just helps perpetuate. No, that's not the right word. It helps people realize that we are a Christ-centered
Center
church. I mean,
Church.
it's in our name, but people still get confused and have, weird
I
questions
love
about,
it.
do you worship the Savior? So I love that. And I loved the last little bit where it talked about the number of sealing rooms in the different rooms, 22 sealing rooms. I cracked up because my temple closest to me, the Columbus Temple, has technically two sealing rooms, one that is used for marriages and one that is used for proxies because it's really tiny.
Yeah.
So I was like, 22 sealing rooms. What gives? And instruction rooms, again, I'm like, what's an instruction room? I'm from the land of tiny temples. So, although, hey, the Cincinnati one is looking pretty big in the diagram. So maybe we'll have a couple of instruction rooms in ours. So anyway, it's coming along. It's looking great. Very excited. I'm excited for that to reopen. Salt Lake Temple is a beautiful temple. And I think everyone in the church, if you get the chance, should go through and do a session in Salt Lake.
Yes, I never did a session in Salt Lake before it closed, and I'm guessing when it comes back
Oh.
online, I know that's awful considering I lived in Utah for a number of years and I'm in Idaho, not that far away. I suspect when it comes back online that there will no longer be live sessions, that it will all be
Yeah.
the video. So I think the
So
days of the live session are gone and past.
I'm okay with that though. So the the Salt Lake my second time going through the temple was at Salt Lake actually.
Oh
So I
my.
got my endowment here in Columbus, and then I a week later was planning on flying out to Utah to visit one of my best friends who growing up and his wife and spend a week with them. And while I was out there, I got to go through Salt Lake and Bountiful. So I got to
Awesome.
my second time doing it was a live session, and it's very different having that many people, and the temple was so noisy and the celestial room was so noisy. It really, like, if you sneeze in the celestial room here, everyone turns and looks at you just because there's so much noise. It is a very different experience. Doesn't make
Wow.
it a bad. It's just it's
Just
very
different.
different. So, but it was
Okay.
cool reading the update.
All right. We're getting tight on time, so we're going to need to cruise through some of these last ones. I don't want to cruise too fastly through this next one because I really liked it, but maybe a few of our stories after that will speed up a
Okay.
little bit more. But tell us about this next one because this is seriously, I saw this, I posted it on the TWIM Facebook page because this is literally my resolution for the year.
No, so this was a an article written by a reverend who attended BYU years ago, or at least played football for BYU.
Yes.
And he talked about four resolutions we can make in 2025, four holy habits that we can use to change our life and change the lives of others. And they kind of fit in the standard Mormon answer category, but I love them because they're good. So first of all, he said forgive more, and he clarifies that forgiveness doesn't mean that you excuse the behavior, you just free yourself from the bitterness. And I think that is such an important lesson for people to learn. So you start with forgiving more, and then he talks about serving more. We know service is awesome. You
Yes.
know the benefits of service, so duh, serve. Then love more because the world can always use more love. And then give grace more. And talking about giving it generously, extending compassion, and it was a beautiful article and taking these gospel principles and tying in ways that they kind of fit into the secular world. And usually when people take church teachings and try to capitalize them this way, I kind of wrinkle my nose. I think I don't love it,
Yeah,
but I thought this was done really well. And I think that these are good resolutions. This is a good way to
exactly.
start the year.
And that is why I loved it. In fact, I have been meaning to all week and I haven't had a chance. I want to take a Sharpie marker and write that on the mirror in my bathroom so that I see it every day. Love more, serve more, um, forgive more, and give grace more.
Yes.
Just
And I think
that
that last
can't be
one, like
better.
the first and the last, I think all four are
Yes.
important, but those were the two that for me I read and I was like, I think people need those because they're they're interesting concepts to have
Yes.
conversations with people about. So, but definitely a good one and definitely ones I'm going to be working on in my life this year.
Agreed. Okay, we have a little bit of sad news. We have lost our first Osmond. Wayne Osmond passed away. Of course, he was one of the four original Osmond brothers, and he was the fourth child of the 9 children that I believe George and Olive had. He was 73 years old. He had a stroke and he passed away right around the beginning of the new year. And so since then, there have been a number of tributes to him. Because I read an article about him on Facebook, my Facebook feed, the algorithm has been picking up every Osmond story and every Osmond picture from the 70s. And so I have been inundated with the last 10 days with Osmond trivia and pictures and
I mean, is that a
tributes.
bad thing?
No,
That's not
it's
a bad
not. I've
thing.
really loved it. It's one of the few times that I'm like, I like this algorithm, Facebook. I'm glad you're picking it up. But all of his siblings have gotten on social media and said really wonderful things about him and just what an absolutely Christ-like individual he was. And all of his siblings have said, we always wanted to be Wayne. We always wanted to emulate Wayne. Wayne was so wonderful. And so, um, you know, very sad for the Osmonds. Probably a little bit of relief for Wayne. He'd suffered a number of health issues over the course of the last few years. In 1997, he underwent surgery for a brain tumor, and I didn't realize this. The treatment for the cancer resulted in almost a total loss of his hearing, which he said in 2008 was kind of funny and ironic because he had the best ears in the family. And whenever his brothers wanted their instrument tuned, he was the one who tuned them.
It is kind of
So
ironic.
it is kind of
So,
ironic, but anyway, so our love and prayers go out to the Osmond family as they miss their brother, and um, it's
yes,
everybody's getting older. It's inevitable, sadly.
it is. So, but yeah. And I guess that
All
leads into the
right,
next
that
story.
leads into the next story, which is very sad as well.
So,
Oh, am I? Oh, I'm covering the next story. Sorry.
it's okay. I was going to hop in.
Yeah, no, no, no. We had another death. We had a mission president serving in France who died at the age of 54, which that's a bit unusual to have a mission president that passes away. B, 54 is very
It's
young,
young.
and he died in his sleep. He just didn't wake up. And
And
so,
they still haven't released an official cause of death, too. So I'm interested. I'm just because
yeah,
I'll be interested to see what it is. But that's so sad.
exactly. It really is. And he and his wife had only been serving 6 months. They started in June of 2024. So they were relatively new presidents in this mission. And also sad for those missionaries. That's got to be so
I was about to
incredibly
say.
challenging when you're a missionary and your mission president unexpectedly passes away.
Because I remember hearing like my brother, he still like talks about his mission president. And I think he bumped into him like a year or two ago or something. And it's just there's that bond there. They're kind
Yeah,
of like a parent surrogate while you're out.
they
So
are.
yeah, my heart just bleeds for the missionaries and the family.
And his wife,
His
too.
wife, yes.
Yeah.
So
So.
sad.
All right, well, let's move on to one of my favorite categories, Mormons behaving badly.
We
Now,
have good ones.
I know anybody who's listened to this podcast for the last few months knows it has been a dry desert of Mormons behaving badly. They've all been behaving themselves, and I've had nothing to talk about other than to give Ammon Bundy updates and Lori Vallow updates. But alas, they went on a little streak in the month of December. We have not one and not two. We have three
Three.
Mormons behaving badly stories. So let's start with the first one. This is courtesy of some missionaries and a ring camera. This happened in Topeka, Kansas. So the missionaries go, push the button on the Ring camera on somebody's door. They're standing there waiting for somebody to answer the door. I don't know if they're unaware that Ring cameras record you. I can't imagine that anybody in 2025 wouldn't be aware when you push the button on a Ring camera, or sometimes it's set so not even when you push the button, but it's motion activated and it starts recording. So the Ring camera starts recording, and these particular missionaries begin to, I don't know exactly what they said, but they said some things about Asian people that were not particularly flattering. They did not know the doorbell or the house that they rang the Ring doorbell on, that one of the occupants of that house was Chinese. The door was not answered. She reviews her Ring cam footage. She sees this. She's a little upset. She goes to the media in Topeka, Kansas, and this story airs. Now, the missionaries did reach out to her, and they said, "Hey, Jennifer, we are the missionaries. We were on your doorstep. We apologize for our actions and words. We know what we said was wrong. There may not be anything we can do to make it up. Again, we're so sorry. If is there anything we can do for your family?" And she was really not interested in having further contact. The TV station reached out to the missionaries and the mission, and there was no comment. But I think maybe this is a good opportunity for training for mission presidents to say to their missionaries in areas where you might find Ring doorbells, which is probably North America, maybe into Canada. When you ring the Ring doorbell, shut your mouth.
I mean, it's also just a good reminder for us that these missionaries, I mean, they are 18, 19, 20 year
Yes.
olds. They were just 6 months ago, maybe running through the halls of high school, making really dumb decisions because that's what high schoolers do. And
And you would know that more than anybody
I,
else.
I love my students to death. They are wonderful, but when they do dumb things, they go big or go home, and they don't think. And when I read this story, I have so many times where I have students who will say something that is racist and that is not okay, but they're not thinking that route. They're just thinking
Yeah.
they're funny. They're not thinking of the
Yeah.
long-term consequences. So I'm glad that they will have this learning opportunity. I am sorry that feelings were hurt in this. And yes, they should realize that cameras record, and we should realize that we live in a society where cameras are everywhere. So always assume you're being recorded,
Exactly.
not to sound paranoid, but yeah, just, boy.
I saw another one this week, and I can't remember if it was on Richie's page, the cultural hall, that I saw this, or where I saw this. Again, it was two Mormon missionaries being recorded by a ring cam. They were definitely not saying anything. They were not saying anything racist or inappropriate or anything like that. They were having just the most mundane discussion about insects and animals, and just kind of what you would expect two teenage boys to be having. And it was just kind of funny. And the point of it was just the kind of the silly talks that companions have amongst each other, because sometimes you're just really bored. Anyway, so
Yeah,
kind of
they're video recording and audio. It is all a thing these
exactly.
days.
All right. Well, let's hit story number 2 in Mormons
All
behaving
right.
badly.
This is from Orem, Utah. A man was arrested for stealing several credit cards from the Orem Temple and racking up thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. And when I first read this, I was like, wait, they're keeping credit cards in temples? Like, what's going on? But from what I'm gathering, I think he went through the patrons' lockers and took credit cards out of the lockers, and then went and did that. So, holy cow. Does it magnify or amplify your sin if you do it in a temple? Like, is that, I was like,
Seriously.
"Ooh." And he went around to multiple stores, and the police finally caught up with him and took care of it. There were 3 known victims. And they all had visited the temple throughout the month, so I'm guessing this also happened over multiple visits. So I'm like, was he a worker? Was he just a frequent patron who is
I
now not a
know.
frequent patron?
It it
So
it It does not say. I've always wondered why there was a lock and key on your locker in the temple, and now I know. And I have a funny story to tell you. So last Saturday night, my husband and I did a session. I went and I put my stuff in the locker, and I remember specifically shutting the locker. I didn't pull the key out at that time because I think I was getting some more clothes on or whatnot, but I had all my stuff in there and thinking to myself, oh, I've got to grab my key. And of course, I walked out of the locker without my key. I'm sitting down in the room waiting for the session to start. And all of a sudden, I realized, I left
The
my key in my
key.
locker, which normally I probably would have been, no big deal. But I had read this story and I was like, I gotta go get my key out of the locker and get my locker locked.
Yeah, no, it definitely is going to make me think twice. So, when I go, I'm a worker, so the bathroom I change in is before the recommend desk. So no, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna even like start stuffing my temple bag that is big, like start cramming it
Yeah,
in my locker. I'm like, oh boy. So that
yeah.
was again stealing from inside a temple. That just,
Ow.
whew.
Yeah. Ugh.
I don't think someone's gonna have a temple recommend anymore. Just a guess.
Yeah.
So.
At least for a while. Okay, our last Mormon behaving badly. Now, we don't know if this was a Mormon that actually did this, but we're going to call it Mormon adjacent.
It is Mormon adjacent. So there was a an expensive tapa cloth in the church history museum in Salt Lake. And from googling, tapa cloths are Polynesian, just a ceremonial cloth, very beautiful embroidery. That's what I could figure out was because there was no picture in the article. Anyway, a woman walked into an exhibit in the evening and poured an ink-like liquid onto this tapa cloth, and the cloth was valued at $10,000,
Yeah.
and it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars to remediate the damage. So kind of a big deal. And my big question I want to know is just why?
Yeah. What?
Why? The article didn't really explain her motivation. Also didn't talk about the significance of said cloth and why it was in
Yeah,
the church history, which museum, and I wish we knew that because maybe that would
I
help
do.
explain the why, but bad job, woman. Don't damage expensive pieces of
Eh,
fabric.
Exactly. So, anyway, hopefully, after these three stories, we will go back to the dry desert of no Mormons behaving badly for a period of time. But I do have to say, in the last couple of weeks, they've been doing a bang up
You know what?
job of behaving badly.
They ended 2024 with a bang.
Yes, yes, they
They
did.
really did.
All right. Well, that concludes our news stories. So now we get to move on to our segment of favorite things. And so, Laura, I am going to let you go first and tell us what thing or things, because if you want to share more than one, I'm fine with that, that you would like to share tonight. And then I will share mine.
What's really funny is I changed mine completely from when we were talking the other day.
Oh,
So I was telling
oh,
Tiffany I had a terrible time figuring out what to do this week because I just was having trouble. And literally about 2 hours before I was doing dishes and I was washing my mini crock pot. And I was like, this is my favorite thing. Okay, so if you don't know about these, then this is a life changer. So I'm a teacher again, and I have my blessed 30-minute lunch that should not be interrupted, but it is constantly interrupted by children with needs. So it has a lovely little insertable thing that you can put your food in. And when I get into school in the
okay.
morning, I just take the cord out of the bottom, plug it in. It has one setting. And by the time I get to lunch, this bad boy is heated perfectly and it is delicious and it is wonderful. And then I bring it home. And it is
Ooh,
the
so
best thing ever.
what do you like to put in your crock pot? Do you have a bevy of things that you take to school for lunch? Or are you like,
Uh,
I eat the same thing every day because it's just easier?
I mix it up a little bit. I love things with rice. So,
Okay.
and ever since my allergy, I've developed quite an affinity for more Asian inspired dishes because there's a lot less
Okay.
dairy, and Indian and that part of the world. So, soups and that's kind of what I go for. So, and then saying that, I had spaghetti and meatballs. yesterday. That's what I was cleaning out. So, but I love this. Actually, every student teacher I have, I buy them one as a parting gift because this is a teacher's lifesaver. Really works for more than just teachers, but this is my favorite thing. My mini crock pot. My only complaint is that you cannot buy the insert separately because I would love
Mm,
to have like 3 or 4 because I
yeah,
mean, I live alone. My
yeah,
dishwasher gets run once a week. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
So you're
but
hand
no,
washing.
this is hand washing, or I actually bought a second one because I'm lazy.
Fair enough.
But it's allowed. So anyway, this is my favorite thing.
Okay.
Mini crock pot.
Well, I am going to share with you my favorite thing. This was a gift I received for Christmas. My son and his wife purchased this for me, and it was one of those things I didn't know I needed until I got it. So,
I'm so excited to see this.
let me show you. It is a pink Stanley cup.
Oh,
Now,
it's gorgeous.
that's first of all, pink, my signature color, which is one of the
Yeah.
reasons they purchased it. The other reason they purchased it is look at the lid. It has the flip lid. So it
It's a
doesn't
flip
have,
lid?
it's a flip lid. So it doesn't have the straw. The lid just flips up. It is so fantastic because I have a couple of cups that have this flip lid, but they're not a Stanley. Now, I have this Stanley right here that my daughter gave me, which is the original kind of Stanley, but it has the straw. And
Yeah, and
I am not a
it
fan of the straw because I am continually tipping my cup over and then stuff comes out. So I have not used this as much because I don't like the lid. So when I got this one with the flip lid, I
yeah,
was like,
that's a game
oh,
changer.
it is such a game changer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get online and see for my larger Stanley if perchance I can just buy a flip lid that will fit my larger Stanley, and then I can use both of these Stanleys. The other thing too I have to say about the Stanley is I really thought the Stanley was kind of like overrated. I'm like, oh, this is just a bunch of Utah mom influencer hype. It's just a cup. There's a million of them out there that
Same.
aren't Stanley
I
and
have a fake Stanley.
cost a lot less. I have to tell you, I am a converted fan of the Stanley compared to my other cup that I used that had a flip lid. And my other cup that that I used that had a flip lid was a Lululemon cup. So it's not like it was like a cheap cup, but this thing keeps my Diet Coke so much colder than the Lulu cup. And I am loving the functionality of the handle because my Lulu cup doesn't have a handle. It's just a cup, so you have to hold it cup style. The handle is so convenient. So this Stanley has
That's
essentially become a
awesome.
personal appendage to me, as in like a third arm since I got it for Christmas. It was the very best thing I got for Christmas, and I absolutely love it. So I would definitely say a Stanley is worth the monetary investment of the money, but only if you get the
Have the
flip lid
flippy lid.
Stanley.
Now, for a second
Flippy
there, I thought
lid.
it was one of the Wicked Stanleys because I saw the pink and I was like, "You got the
No.
Glinda Stanley."
I do have to say though, I saw a Barbie Stanley on Amazon that has the flippy lid.
And you were tempted.
I might have to have the Barbie Stanley, or at least tell the kids, if you want to make your mother very happy for Mother's Day, buy her the Barbie Stanley with the flippy lid, please. So, anyway,
Nothing wrong with dropping a hint. So
nothing wrong with dropping a hint. And then it saves them the time and trouble of going, what do we get her? They go, oh, hey, we know exactly what she wants. She'll be perfectly
so
delighted.
you keep an Amazon wish list going. So when people
I
ask
do keep
you,
an Amazon wish list and it's public so my kids can get on there anytime if they want it. All
no,
right.
that's been a
Well,
game
Laura,
changer.
it has been an absolute pleasure
Yes,
to
thank you so
record
much
with you
for letting
tonight.
me
I
come
have
back.
thoroughly enjoyed it. So, listeners, if you want to reach out, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out at comment. Is it comment or questions at
I think it's
thisweekinmormons.com?
comment.
I think it's comment too. I don't know why I just had this big brain fart. Comment at thisweekinmormons.com. We will open our
Going
mailbag
to
and
the
respond.
website.
Thank you. You can also find us, of course, on social media on the Facebook page. So far this year, we're doing a pretty good job of getting updates on the Facebook page. And then, of course, Laura, I will put our favorite things on the Twin Sisters Instagram. Ariane was able
Wait,
to get that updated over Christmas, so I appreciate that.
isn't it contact at This Week in
Oh,
Mormons?
you're right. It's contact at This Week in Mormons. Oh,
I'm like
gosh.
thinking like, wait, no, it's not comment. What's wrong?
It's yes, it's
It's been a long week,
contact.
guys.
It has been a long week for both you and for me.
I'm
So,
snowed in,
yes,
so it's been a long week.
I have I am worked in. I am so worked in that tomorrow is Saturday and I'm a government employee and I'm going into my office tomorrow. Anyway,
I'm
yeah,
so
that's
sorry.
that is the start to January for me is I've gone 0 to 60 in 1 nanosecond. So,
I'm
anyway, but it
sending
is
you
what it
good
is.
vibes. So
Thank
I can
you.
send you some snow if that would help because we've got a lot of it in the Midwest.
I saw that on the national news and I will pass on your snow. Thank you very
Say
much.
I've had
Okay.
2.5 days canceled this week and supposed to have
Wow.
district honors choir tomorrow. And I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and call my transportation supervisor to see if we can go because another storm is coming in. So,
That is what I hear. All right. Well,
oh,
stay
yeah.
safe out there in Ohio with your snow and your ice. And listeners, thank you very much for joining us. And we're not doing a Patreon episode tonight, didn't have some stories for that. But if you want to be a Patreon subscriber, please feel free to throw $2 or $3 a month our way just to keep the lights on, and we would appreciate it. Good night.
Night, guys.